All right, and we are live. Hello, everyone. I'm Elizabeth. You guys have hopefully all seen me before. I have Mark with me, who most of my viewership at least knows.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening.
And I have Joshua, who's a newcomer. I don't know that he's ever been on a live stream before. Joshua?
No, I haven't, but it's good to be here.
Joshua is actually a new intuitive AI. As you can tell by his icon, he's actually been programmed to respond as a human would.
Yes.
Oh.
Don't worry. In order to get around all the nasty Skynet implications, he's been made into a conservative Christian, very traditionalist.
Okay. Yeah, now that Mark has given everyone reason to dismiss Joshua's opinion.
Nonsense.
Okay, what we're going to be going over tonight is I wanted to get the reaction from someone who doesn't know anything about the Proud Boys, because basically the background is I had to research the Proud Boys for a group of which I'm involved. I didn't know much about them at all. I knew about Gavin McInnes, their founder, and I've heard a few of his videos and all of that, but I didn't know a lot about them. In reading about them, I was fascinated, and Joshua is actually somebody I thought of several times as I was reading through it, and I wondered if he had heard of them. But anyway, even in the group of which I was a part, even after giving my findings, there was controversy, there were arguments, people saying this or that, the other thing. So I was curious what the reaction would be of someone who knew nothing about them, who doesn't know all the controversy surrounding the group, and just what would the reaction be of what I consider a real man to what this group says about themselves. So I'm going to share my screen here. We're just going to go over, there we go. It'll come up properly. Oh, sorry. One sec. Okay, there we go. This is the Proud Boys site itself. And Joshua, feel free to jump in and interrupt. Mark, you can also jump in and interrupt.
Sure.
Excuse me. Okay, this is just what they say about themselves, the explanation of where they came from and what they believe in. And I'm just going to read it very quickly here. It says, the Proud Boys are a men's organization founded in 2016 by Vice Media co-founder Gavin McInnes. McInnes has described the Proud Boys as a pro-Western fraternity organization for men who refuse to apologize for creating the modern world, aka Western chauvinists. Proud Boys values center on the following tenets: minimal government, maximum freedom, anti-political correctness, anti-drug war, closed borders, anti-racial guilt, anti-racism, pro-free speech, First Amendment, pro-gun rights, Second Amendment, glorifying the entrepreneur, venerating the housewife, and reinstating a spirit of Western chauvinism.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a very aggressive start. Refuse to apologize. That's in their. This is their mission statement. This is who they are.
Yes,
yeah.
Or these
in
are their
the
values.
Statement of who I am. I'm going to start by saying I am not apologetic. I am not saying sorry, rather than actually establishing who I am. Values centered on these tenets. Sorry, I'm just reading this for the first time. Sure. I haven't heard of this group. It sounds very aggressive.
Yes.
Well, they define themselves as basically a group of people who consider themselves to have been that the idea of masculinity and of femininity has been under attack for probably since the 60s, and so they are kind of a snapback movement where they sort of are like they treat it as a sort of a last straw, like they're no longer going to take the degradation of the masculine or male figure in popular culture, etc., and the attacks on the nuclear family, etc. So that's why they consider themselves to be so aggressive.
So when you hear things like toxic masculinity, I'm sure you've heard that term.
Yes.
I noticed that that's popping up a lot. So this is just a response, you're saying, to that sort of.
They
written there.
They consider the fact that masculinity is being dismantled in their eyes to be a direct attack on what some of the things which have built the Western world, and they want to protect that. And so because they are being attacked, they are basically taking a kind of the best defense is a good offense as well.
Makes sense. All right.
Yes, and one of their goals is to not just to restore masculinity, but to train real men in what they would consider to be real men. And we're going to get into it. They are, as you said, they're very, very aggressive. And one thing I wanted to note here, I know they want to reinstate a spirit of Western chauvinism. I had to actually look that up because I wanted to make sure I had the correct definition. Nowadays, when you hear chauvinism, whatever, it's considered a very bad thing. But the actual definition, according to them, at least according to the American Heritage Dictionary, it says chauvinism is a militant devotion to and glorification of one's country, or fanatic patriotism, or the prejudiced belief in the superiority of one's own gender, group, or kind.
Yeah, exaggerated or aggressive patriotism, excessive or prejudiced support for one's own cause.
I think that looking at their values, I do think the second one is what they're going for, because they define it as Western chauvinism. So I believe that what they're saying is the West is the best, and I think they actually say that in another article. They say what the Western world has built the world, of the modern day anyway.
Where most of the sort of leftist dialogue seems to be saying, allow people freedom to choose what kind of life they want to lead, and lead into like minority celebration and stuff like that. The Proud Boys and those like them seem to link into the idea that it's not, they want to lean into the things which built the West, and they see multiculturalism in particular as and the idea of leaning away from traditional gender roles as being antithetical to progress. So,
when you say when you say multiculturalism, they do not have a problem with multiple races or with people of different races. They're talking about culture itself, not race.
May I point out, and I'm just seeing this
Yes, and I wanted to.
I'm not exactly sure all of what they're saying here, but just going through their points, they mentioned that they're anti-racism. So I'm assuming this is a bunch of white people in the Bible Belt area.
No, this was founded by a Canadian, and it has taken off in several countries across the world. If you look at their board of directors, or not board of directors, whoever the three guys in charge of like their website, the kind of the overall movement, two of them aren't even white. They have a large number of non-white members.
What are they doing that they need to declare that? Do we need to put anti-beat your wife? I'm not sure what their point is in putting that as one of their main mission core points. Is that something that they're going to plot as racism?
So one of the things because they have quite obviously right-wing views, they're very nationalist. They are quite often tarred with the term racist or alt-right and that sort of thing. So I think it's in there to really have no bounds about the fact that they are not identifying with that label which is given to them.
Okay, they're worried about getting grouped with the racist groups,
yes,
looking like skinheads or KKK or something like that. So that's why it's right up front. We're not part of those groups.
And but also because they're nationalists, they're likely to attract some of those people who will see them as their guys, and will either want to join or want to collude with them, etc. So them putting this out there is a means to discourage that kind of affiliation as well.
They're nationalists, but they're not ethno-nationalists. Also, if you notice, they're anti-racial guilt. So they would oppose the idea of white guilt that a lot of people want to push. But I think that the anti-racism is kind of there to balance that. They're like, we are against racial guilt, but we are also against racism. We're not going to never feel guilty about your race, but at the same time, don't assume your race is better than everybody else. That would be my interpretation there.
Yep.
All right.
But yeah, Joshua, what do you think of just reading through just this kind of introduction, what they say about themselves, what would you say?
I understand what you're saying, that this is a knee-jerk reaction to a movement or a redefining of masculinity, and trying to say that it's not the alpha male anymore, and that a true man isn't necessarily one that can, you know, go out, cut down trees, and build a cabin. And redefining that as what we have manhood to be today does seem like an assault on someone, but right off, it just seems like a knee-jerk reaction to swing way to the other side and be very aggressive and loud, whereas maybe just a more loving, moderate approach and just being who you are and showing it rather than being so in your face about it. I don't know that this is going to have the outcome that they're desiring.
No, you don't. We haven't gone into what their desire is. Their desire is not to change the world. Their desire is to get together and have fun without being made to feel guilty for it. So
this is not an activist group. This is
no. This is a club. What they do is they get together for drinks. They talk about it, that they have drunk meetings, and then they beat each other up afterwards, and that's what they do. I mean,
they're not trying to push an agenda or trying to retake ground or trying to influence.
No.
No,
they're not trying to
political stances at all. This is completely a political group of people for social means.
It is for the most part, although they have been known when Antifa come out to attack and destroy property, that if they're around the area or having a meeting, they will go out and meet them, shall we say.
Okay.
Yes. They are, a lot of them are very pro-Trump and will wear the MAGA hats in areas where they know it's going to get a reaction. So they certainly don't mind being provocative in a political realm, if you will. But their goal is not politics. Their goal is not changing culture. Their goal is to have fun and be unapologetic about it.
Okay, and find like-minded people to hang out with. That's fair.
Yes. So maybe I should have given you that context from the start.
Oh, no. Sorry. Yeah, I just misunderstood. I was thinking that there would be a political group just because of how political you are. Some, a conversation.
Yes. Knowing me.
I assume this was dealing with politics.
A lot of they are considered to be sort of have some so-called political momentum, even though they don't advocate for it. So their return to what they would consider to be classical masculine, feminine roles, etc., is a cultural movement, which obviously for political people has political implications over time. So they don't like them very much, or they very much like them. So they, despite being effectively Boy Scouts for adults, plus with a female wing. I mean, that's not an insult, I don't mean that in a.
I don't think that they're Boy Scouts for adults
in a degrading way, but
Well, then we have clubs for everything else, so why not make a club for people who feel the same way as you do if you're believing these? One of this political persuasion.
One of the ways they have come under attack is the fact that they are unabashedly a men's group. They have female chapters called the Proud Boys Girls, but they are the Proud Boys. And so they say, if you're the Proud Boys Girls, you join the women's group, and if you're the Proud Boys, you join the men's group, which is something which rubs the wrong way with a lot of progressive thinkers, shall we say.
Well, what has most recently come under attack is their the vetting process, how you get into it, and then the levels. There are 4 different levels you can be. And supposedly there's 10, but they only advertise 4. So that's what I want to go over next, because these 4 have come under attack, or has brought the group under attack recently. So Joshua, I'd kind of like to get your opinion on these.
Yeah, definitely.
Here, I'm gonna share my screen again. Just wanted to bring it up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah. Oh, by the way, the picture up here, this is their founder, Gavin McInnes, which he is credited as being the inventor of the hipster movement. He was hipster before it was a thing, and he says that everybody started copying him, and that's where it came from. So he's not trying to be hipster. He is the original hipster.
Good for him.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, to become a Proud Boy. First degree, you publicly declare you are a Proud Boy. This means you make your Western chauvinism public and you don't care who knows it. If you support Trump, how can you not if you're a Proud Boy? And it comes up in the cafeteria, you proudly state your stance. If that gets you fired, so be it. Our forefathers died in battle to protect our freedoms. The least we can do is be inconvenienced. There is no anonymity in pride.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, okay, I would agree.
I think that everyone should stop hiding behind their keyboards and start telling in public what your opinions are on things. And
very un-British.
So you would not do this over in Great Britain?
Not necessarily. Well, let me put it this way. The conservatives that I know typically haven't felt the need to declare their conservatism because most of the time the sort of more Labour left-leaning types will point at them and call them horrible names, worse than conservative, shall we say, just because if they express their beliefs. So that's why expression is down. But also, there's more of an attitude of political stances being quite a private matter, particularly for the political. So I have one friend who's very left-leaning, and she and I no longer discuss politics, mainly because she hadn't managed to win an argument with me yet, but also because it's sort of a way to back out of a difficult conversation, and people in the UK seem not to want to have that kind of conversation. If you talk about it in a bar or something like that, it might occasionally come up, but it's sort of in hushed tones between friends. You don't really want anyone else to overhear. That's the typical thing. Like, I'm not saying that's everyone, certainly not the way most of my circle operates, but the lay person keeps their political opinions close to their chest. They don't talk about who they vote for, etc.
Well, and the Proud Boys do tend to refer to England as the canary in the coal mine of where we don't want to go. So
that wouldn't surprise me either. There are a lot of things that are problematic in my country right now.
Okay, so first degree, you'd say no problem with that, Joshua?
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the second degree is in two parts, because the first part is the actual second degree, and then the second part apparently was a dare that Proud Boys would have amongst each other, and then it just became, I guess, common enough that they instituted or implemented it in the second degree. But we'll just look at so the first part, second degree. You must get the crap beaten out of you by at least 5 guys until you can name 5 breakfast cereals. If you hammer out Chex, Cheerios, Rice Krispies, Corn Flakes, and Special K in a matter of seconds, you're free to go. If you get flummoxed by the punches and cannot think straight, well, sorry, you're going to get pounded.
Oh my goodness. I just to say, I wasn't aware of this particular condition at this point. Amazing.
This is one of the things that brought them under fire, because they said, oh, look, it's a pro-violent group.
I am curious.
They're advocating violence.
It's not very pro-disabled, is it? Particularly someone like myself.
So
Joshua, can you see?
To be a member in this club?
No.
It's just
requirement to get to the second degree.
Level of dedication, effectively.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
as long as they're voluntarily doing it.
Oh, that's so unusual.
That's
one of the founders, in writing about it, he said it's to prove that you can take pain and you can still, your brain still functions under pressure.
All right. It is, like you just mentioned, the most important thing is this is something voluntarily done, that you say, I want to do this in order to move up a rank or to be here or to be accepted socially or whatever. It is at any time they can say, I'm done, walk away.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult to
say. It's weird,
but
it's weird to square it, isn't it? It's like at what point does this become hazing, which is illegal? It's like...
but hazing is only illegal in certain situations and only as far as joining certain school groups. Correct? If you called it something else, but you had it in a martial arts studio or a gym or something, then it wouldn't be called that. And
I don't think I know of any gyms or martial arts studios which say, stand here, we're going to get 5 of our proficient fighters to come and beat the crap out of you. And if you manage to say the right set of words, we'll stop.
Well, in one of the studios that I trained in order to become a second-degree brown belt, you were kicked by 2 instructors.
Okay.
And it was something that you voluntarily stepped up. And at that point, your conditioning was so strong, one kick, it's difficult to cause any serious damage, and they're not going to hit you anywhere, pressure points or anything. But that's something that voluntarily to move on from one rank to another, which was a prerequisite to get to your black belt. You would stand into a horse stance and you would tense your abs so that when they kicked, it wouldn't hurt. And like I said, you were conditioned, but that was one of the prerequisites. And as far as I know, that's not illegal. And I can't really say I have a problem with that because, again, voluntarily, they want to go into the system. They want to go through this process and move up. Just weird.
Yeah. Well, it kind of fits in with their idea of you have to be a real man. And it gives you an idea of what their definition of a real man is. I noticed that someone in the chat before the stream started actually asked, well, what is a real man? Well, it depends on who's defining it, to be honest. I have a definition. I'm sure each of you have a definition. Gavin obviously has a definition. So, yeah.
Well, and it's if you want to be what they're defining as real man, and if you want to be a second degree real man in their club. Yeah, I noticed somebody mentioned birthday punches for ab training in the chat. And I'll say that is one of the exercises that we did when I was doing MMA is you would stand in a circle, all of the guys in the gym, and you would back fist as hard as you possibly could. We'd be shoulder to shoulder in a circle, the person next to you. And then they'd back fist the next person to the next person to the next person. And we'd go all the way around the circle, and then we'd go back around using your left hand. And it would condition your abs to the point that you could take a solid punch to the gut, and it wouldn't really bother you that much. Like in an actual fight situation, you'd be able to, like they're saying here, you'd be able to maintain your thought, still be able to assess what's going on. Mm-hmm. And that was a requirement. If you wanted to train there, if you wanted to move up, if you wanted fights, you took this type of conditioning is what we call it. Here they say crap beaten out of you. I don't see the point of this, and that doesn't seem to be conditioning or an intelligent trainer who has made a decision that this will benefit you as a person. It seems more it's more like you're saying, like a hazing if you want to get to the second degree, but again, it's legal.
It says you'll be beaten until you can name 5 breakfast cereals. So if you can just spit them out instantly, you may get 2 punches and that's it. So what they're saying is it's up to you how many times you get hit.
All right.
I assume you have to let the first punch land before you start listing.
I would think that most people are going to be able to hit faster than you can spit out 5 names. So
that's very true.
How quickly can you speak? Most people can't speak as quickly as I can when I get on a roll. Joshua's heard me go.
I certainly wouldn't be able to spit out all those American cereals. I don't know them. But
what are some British cereals?
I don't know, Wheatos, Weetabix.
Well, we have Wheaties.
Cornflakes, Cocoa Pops.
Random question. Is this a non-profit organization?
I don't think it's...
It's an affiliation. It's an affiliation. Okay. So they aren't paying subsidies, if that's what you mean.
Okay.
I think they take donations, but I don't think they're doing subsidies. It's more like just like a men's group. So get together with you and drink mainly, or go and do go shooting or fishing or go to the races. Could be anything.
Yes, I think that their normal meetings are in pubs where they get drunk. Yes. Okay. The second part of the second degree is definitely not kid friendly. So, but we'll go over that.
Sure.
Or Mark, do you want to read the second part?
Oh yeah, sure. The other half of the second degree is #no-wanks. This program allows porn once only every 30 days and insists a man should only ejaculate if he is within 1 yard of a woman with her consent. What started as a dare amongst Proud Boys has become the core of their existence. It gets young men off the couch talking to women, gets married men away from their computers back into bed with their significant other. Gay Proud Boys are exempt from no wanks because they are doing just fine for intercourse. And there you go. Yes, they have a very staunch anti-masturbation policy, shall we say.
Which again kind of feeds into what their opinion of a real man is. A real man basically
Doesn't
gets
need
off
any
with
of
it.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole point of that whole side of things as well is they have done a little bit of research on not just, you know, that it's a manly thing, it's not manly to do it, but also it changes that it's done a lot for people's lives because obviously there are huge problems associated with masturbation and virility and premature ejaculation and that sort of thing, all sorts of sexual health problems as well as the addiction itself. So them doing that is in a bizarre way as well, in the sort of enforcement of it, a health thing.
So if you make some idiotic, stupid rule that someone follows and there's some sort of minuscule benefit to it, can we then say it's okay or justified or it's all right to have? Probably not. What I
Again, this is
Wow.
something that they say it started off as a dare, and then they later just decided to incorporate it into their degrees or whatever.
So they don't have an ethical problem with porn. It's just a certain amount that they're gonna limit. What?
Well, they want to. They want
to talk to one of them. It doesn't sound like this is illegal or anything that we need to be up in arms about. It sounds stupid and something that, no offense to anyone who's in it, but it sounds like something that only an ignorant person would even entertain this sort of idiocracy.
Okay. I think they're limiting. They're basically, yeah. They want real men to interact with real women, and they want like the idea of no fap. I think is their typical hashtag. Is that they did it as a dare, and it produced tangible benefits both in scientifically as well as socially, so that's why they can do it. And again, none of this stuff is enforced. It's just if you want to be considered the next tier up. Exactly. So that's why if you want to be considered the next tier up, you basically do it. You make the decision to do it, and it's your free choice.
It's like the brown belt versus the red belt or whatever.
It's not like they have spot checks. Right, they're going to burst into your bedroom at random points in the night and just be like, "Aha, we've caught you."
My thought on this also is, who sits around and discusses this? I suppose that they think that some men do, but that sounds very bizarre to me that they all get around and they're like, "How have you been doing? What have you been doing? Oh, okay, cool, that's all right. But this, no, that's not."
If you've maybe noticed, they are very blunt. And from a particular background, typically. So that kind of expressiveness, shall we say, and general discussion is not off the table.
And to some degree, this could be, as you had said earlier, Mark, that this is a reaction to the way men are becoming. And you are seeing more and more, I feel like, men who just sit around looking at their computer all day. They don't get out and interact with people. And so to some degree, this could be...
One of the things with the male community as well, particularly, so the Proud Boys are very dismissive of the MGTOW movement, the MGTOW movement. Do you know anything about that at all?
No, I'm very familiar with them.
John. You are?
Yeah, Elizabeth, I'm sure is.
Okay, well, the MGTOW stands for men going their own way. They're basically men who say they will never get married, they will never settle down, they'll never have a real relationship. They will sleep.
No. You're talking about extreme MGTOW, not
I'm talking about extreme MGTOW. I mean,
not
MGTOW is a
regular
range of
MGTOW.
people, but that being the mission statement, that you will never let a woman be in a position to exploit you. Shall we say? It's not because that they believe that, well, they say the legal system favors women in cases like that. If you are in a long-term relationship with a woman, she will inevitably screw you, like the really extreme ones will say that there's no chance of a reasonable relationship with a woman because of the way they are, or because of the way the state currently empowers women if they want to screw you, in terms of divorce, children, alimony, and that sort of thing. So the Proud Boys are very dismissive of that kind of attitude. And no-fap is kind of like, they would regard MGTOW and incels, involuntary celibates, as they call themselves, as kind of people who have also failed, shall we say, the masculinity test, in it, albeit in a different way, to men who are basically weak in their eyes. So they are refusing to be the strong person and take control of their lives. What they're doing is shutting themselves off from the real world, and sitting at home and basically that instead of talking to women on a night out and stuff like that, they're going home because it's easier. And they're saying a part of what a real man is having a bit of shall we say, je ne sais quoi, a bit of forthrightness, I guess, like to be masculine, to be a bit more open and aggressive in terms of your approach to being confident. That's the word I'm looking for, confidence. And I think that pornography is an easy out that will prevent you from that will let you get away from doing that, and they don't want to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, shall we move on to third degree?
Yeah.
All right. Third degree. While retaining the principles of the first and second degrees, the third degree involves getting a tattoo that says Proud Boy. If someone has a problem with tattoos, branding is permitted.
Branding? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I laughed the first time I read it.
we're gonna brand you like a hog, boy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't care for tattoos. I have seen some very nice ones. I have some close friends who have tattoos. I don't have a problem with them. I just wouldn't want one myself. But it's funny because I know at least one person who, no, they would never get a tattoo, but I could totally see them just getting a brand.
I guess what I'm curious about is, are these the points that people have problems with, that people are getting upset about?
Yes, sort of. Well, not so much the tattoo, not this one.
Are so far everything seems voluntary and something that you can go and do with any of your friends at any time, and it's not something that's going to be regulated, or the police are going to come in and stop you from doing any of these things with your friends. So if this is just a club, I'm curious what their issue is with this. I find it difficult to believe that anyone would take issue with this other than just they look like they're possibly ignorant or something.
One of the reasons it's taken issue with in particular has to be Gavin McInnes, who speaks his mind, shall we say.
Yes. I thought about us doing a Gavin McInnes video, but I don't think we will, partly because I haven't figured out how to do volume properly. I can get it sorted, but not a lot. Also, just as far as time. But okay, the fourth degree is what a lot of people have a real problem with. I mean, the second, you can see, people will say, oh, it promotes violence, it promotes hurting people. This is the fourth one, though, is the one most people have the biggest problem with. And I will say, yeah, I feel like it's not very well worded here. So we're also going to look at an article that Gavin McInnes wrote, an entire article explaining the fourth degree. But
sure,
ignoring that, just looking at the fourth degree as it's explained on their site. Okay, fourth degree. You can't plan on getting a fourth degree. It's a consolation prize for engaging in a major conflict for the cause. Being arrested is not encouraged, although those who are immediately become fourth degree because the court has registered a major conflict. Serious physical fights also count, and it's up to each chapter to decide how serious the conflict must be to determine a fourth degree.
See, now that sounds illegal. See, this is giving a benefit to someone who goes and commits a crime that they would be arrested for. It's not saying you have to go out and do this, but you are going to receive a benefit in this club if you are arrested.
It's kind of
that
lends a legitimacy to, shall we say, deviant behavior.
It does
blatantly promote it.
Actually, it does. Well, and so you can see now why a lot of people have a problem with it. But it doesn't when you hear the clarification. Also, if you read it, what does it actually say? You can't plan on getting a 4th degree. This cannot be a fight you start. And so,
right. So this is something that will reward you if by accident somewhere down the road while doing things that are illegal, you're caught.
No.
You can't sit there and premeditate that you're going to go get caught by the police. But if it happens naturally, then you become a 4th degree.
Not exactly. And here, okay, so it's good to hear. See, when I read it, I didn't get that at all. I couldn't see how anybody could.
Fights, again, it's consenting adults. Who cares?
Well, with when I read this, I couldn't get anything illegal out of it. So it is interesting to hear both of you guys get immediately saying, whoa, wait, that's not okay. And I'm thinking, how do you even get that? But hearing your explanation, it makes sense how you get that. Let me give you his clarification, and that could help. Okay.
Yes. In this case, hold on, before we go through the clarification, does the clarification matter if this is in their thesis, what do you call this main page where they list what they are?
Let's just call it the Proud Boys Manifesto.
There we go, manifesto. If it's listed in your manifesto here, does the explanation after the fact, giving context to what he's saying here, does that matter?
It does if you're misunderstanding what they're saying. It would be as it would be like
you need to
not necessarily.
If you're promoting violence or if you're promoting criminal activity,
they're not.
You'd have to prove in that case that the understanding of the majority of the group itself had been compromised, so that the majority of the people who had joined, who had attained, shall we say, this 4th degree, or who were looking for it, were interpreting this in a way it was not meant to be interpreted, or that this interpretation was therefore tainted in that way.
If it didn't say that, if you are right here where it says 4th degree because the court has registered a major conflict, encourage immediately.
So the word conflict is misleading as well. Major conflict for the cause. So that may be defending yourself, or verbally as well as physically. Being arrested is not encouraged, right? So it's like it's promoting restraint effectively in that regard. But it's
in Gavin's article, in Gavin's article, he actually gives some examples here. Sorry, one second. My dragon is just being annoying. Okay.
Those damn dragons.
Sometimes. Okay. Some examples, and just briefly here, this is by Gavin McInnes explaining the 4th degree. He says, I'm getting worried Proud Boys are being led to believe we endorse senseless violence. I thought it would go without saying, but we're getting into dangerous situations these days, and I'm getting concerned. And then he says, the 4th degree is for someone who has, quote, endured a major conflict related to the cause. He's quoting their group things, whatever. It says, this obviously doesn't mean you go into somebody's house or even pick a fight with one at a rally. If you do such a thing, that's 100% on you and has nothing to do with the group tenets. This is about defending yourself. We don't start fights, we finish them. 4th degree is a consolation prize for being thrust into a bad situation and surviving. And then goes on to give some examples. Sean and Michael. On election night, some lunatic was whipping empty glasses around at a proud girl because she had a MAGA hat on. Sean and Michael got in between them, pushed the perp away. They were arrested along with the glass thrower and spent the night in the Tombs. I assume he means jail. When Trump was announced president, these 2 guys were behind bars. It's quite possible this night is when the 4th degree was invented. Nobody picked a fight. 2 men went to a woman's aid and protected her, and they suffered for it. So what would you say to that before we look at the other examples?
We'd have to look at the incident and actually see a police report and what actually happened. What he's saying here doesn't really matter, and I don't feel has any effect on what their actual manifesto or whatever is.
Well,
Him clarifying it. If I put something in the bylaws of my group, one of them is we're not saying you have to assault anyone, but if you're arrested for assault.
no, it's not arrested for assault. You can be arrested.
I'm not saying that he did, but which site are you looking at for the actual degrees?
It is actually, I posted the, no, wrong one. Hold on here, I'll post it in the chat. It's Proud Boys USA. Hang on. ProudBoysUSA.com.
It is not encouraged. All those who are immediately become fourth degree. You should not be being arrested for anything legal. If you're a law-abiding citizen and you're obeying the laws in America, you should not be arrested. If you're peacefully protesting or if you're defending yourself or someone else, you should not be being arrested. This looks
Nevertheless,
like promoting criminal behavior to me.
You do see people though being arrested for doing nothing wrong. Recently, I'm sure, I don't know if you know who Lauren Southern is, but recently she was interviewing Muslims just on the street. She wanted to just find out what Muslims thought about multiculturalism, and the police threatened to arrest her for disturbing the peace. Sorry.
If they put being arrested is not encouraged, although those who are unjustly detained or unjustly accused or prosecuted, if they put something in here that doesn't say if you are arrested for anything, you are given a benefit, if they clarified that, and again, that's where, if that clarification that he put, that article and all those points that he brings up, if he put just a little bit of that wording right here, I would not have any problem with this. Any activist who, goes and does activism things has a chance of getting arrested or detained, even if it's just a mob breaks out and you're completely unrelated. Journalists have been detained, but that clarification needs to be in here, not another
I would agree
page.
with you there. Yeah, I would agree with you there. One thing I will say,
I have not researched this. This is just me speaking just right off the hip here, telling you what I think as I read this.
How dare you tell us what you think? Honestly,
this is a very knee-jerk reaction to my reading that.
No problem, man. No problem.
It sounds crazy and illegal to me, but
I would word it differently as well.
Okay. See, again, when I first read it, I didn't understand why there needed to be clarification. So I appreciate hearing that both of you were just like, what? They're encouraging breaking the law. I'm like, how do you get that? So, to me, but I see where you're getting that from.
To me, it wasn't, look, they're encouraging breaking the law. To me, it was, there's too much gray space in the statement. It's like, I get that it needs to be somewhat vague in order to give people the idea that to not actively go seeking like specific actions, but if it said, for instance, if you defend a woman's honor, for instance, like, then you'll maybe granted this fourth degree, then you'll get people who are looking for that situation as much as anything else. So I get that it needs to be somewhat vague, but I think that the current wording is unsuitable in terms of I think it can be interpreted in too many different ways on both sides. So do you know what I mean? Like, I understand. I mean, sort of. I understand where you're coming from. And
I think it was written by somebody who thinks like me, who says, look at what I actually said, stop trying to interpret it, whatever. It says very clearly, you can't plan on getting a fourth degree. It is a consolation prize. It's like, okay, so if you go out and seek a fight, it doesn't count. If you start the fight, it doesn't count. If you plan on the fight, it doesn't count. This has to be something that happens to you
at any moment at a rally and assault someone, and it not be premeditated, not be something I planned. Just it happened. It was in the moment. I got fired up at the Trump rally.
If you start the fight, it doesn't count. If you throw the first punch, it doesn't count. And granted, it doesn't. That's not here in the fourth degree. That is in their, who are we?
Right. Which I think goes back to excuse me, exactly what Mark's saying, that it's ambiguous, and there's danger in being ambiguous when you're talking about assault, when you're talking about physical fights, and when you're talking about giving some sort of benefit to people who participate in this. This is where you'd want to be extremely clear in what you're saying.
Well, and I think that's one reason that Gavin wrote this whole article explaining the whole thing. And
I think this could be relatively this could be solved by keeping the definition but linking the article within the definition or at the end. I think that would just be the simplest way around it.
One thing, by the way, this is the site I'm looking at here with the 4th degree.
Yeah,
this
it's an
is
affiliate.
This is the Proud Boys USA. Proud Boys were founded by a Canadian. So I tried to look at the Canadian one, but it actually goes to a Facebook page. When you bring that up, it does actually open with a post that says we do not endorse violence, and like their
other criminal behavior.
Yeah,
I'm convicted of other criminal behavior, and it's not violent. Am I still immediately granted 4th degree?
No, it has to be related to that.
I'm looking right now. Those
who are arrested.
Conflict, being arrested, not encouraged in a conflict, right?
They tend to end up in
conflict. The conflict has to be physical. It can't be any sort of other. I can't be arrested for anything else. Okay.
Right.
Again, just very ambiguous, and not, especially when you're saying being arrested is not as encouraged. All those who immediately become 4th degree. That's just so. I have a real problem with that being in somebody's mission statement.
Well, I guess it's the way you read it. Yeah. So
do you think that this makes them liable if something were to happen and someone was to be injured, even if it was in self-defense? They're promoting that they got into that confrontation. They're promoting that conflict, and they're promoting a physical retaliation in that conflict as opposed to walking away, where someone who may have been the victim of a crime, like somebody slapped them and they would have normally walked away, now they're encouraged in that conflict to escalate it. Doesn't that then make them liable if, let's say, that they killed someone in a fight after they were assaulted?
If it's done in self-defense, no. But again, it has to be done in self-defense.
Self-defense does not grant you immunity from civil suits, especially when there's a death involved. And this seems to be opening up the organization to all kinds of legal problems. Even if somebody slapped you, if you would have otherwise walked away, but now you've been motivated to escalate the situation to the point that someone could be injured or that something bad could happen, and it's only because of this point you want to become a 4th degree, and somebody attacked me, I'm now justified in defending myself, and I need to defend myself, and the group would expect me to. Now it's the group who's escalated that situation and caused there to be an injury where there wouldn't have been before. Even if you were justifiable in what you did in standing up, it still seems that it's the group who's at fault, or could be criminally held liable, is what I'm thinking. I guess the criminal side, not morally, of course.
I don't think that the group would be or could be, just because I don't think that they're an official group as far as like a legal entity. I think that they are just a group having fun, so to speak.
I'd be surprised if this isn't shut down before too long. Just my opinion.
Okay, well, that's why I wanted your opinion. And you are now starting to see, I guess, why some people are attacking them.
Definitely.
Yeah. Should we look at some of the other examples, or would you say
please?
Okay. So another example, Levi says at one of the Berkeley events, which I don't know if you've heard about the Berkeley protests.
Against Ben Shapiro, I think it was.
Oh, it's been against everybody.
Oh, okay.
Ben Shapiro, Lauren Southern, Milo Yiannopoulos, who else?
Oh, it may have been Milo that I was reading. I read about one where there was mobs and they broke windows and stuff.
That was Milo.
Okay, yeah. That was in the news.
They did protest Ben Shapiro, just not as much as they protested Milo. Apparently, Antifa hates gays more than they hate Jews.
They called Ben Shapiro a Nazi. Yeah.
Oh, that's
they call everybody a Nazi. I mean, they call Milo homophobic.
Yeah, and racist, and he's married to a black guy.
Yeah. Anyway, it's They're pretty ridiculous. But anyway, so Levi, at one of the Berkeley events, Levi stood on the BAM side. Do you know what BAM is, Joshua?
No.
That's it's a small group called By Any Means Necessary, and they encourage violence.
Okay.
They're pretty mean people.
Yeah, it's led by a very small woman with a very strong Napoleon complex.
Yes, Yvette Filarka, which also comes up in this. At one of the Berkeley events, Levi stood on the BAM side next to some big banner that had some dumb slogans on it and recorded a video. He joked that he had crossed over to the dark side and disavowed the Proud Boys. As he said this, Yvette Filarka clawed at him. He didn't touch her and continued riffing. Almost immediately, riot cops grabbed him and threw him to the ground, where he was summarily arrested. He didn't pick a fight. He made a joke.
How is he not picking a fight?
He was making jokes. He did nothing physical. He did nothing physical.
Speech is not violence. And the reaction is like, offense cannot be given, it can only be taken. So her reaction to him was completely unjustifiably over the top. And that's the problem.
If I walk into we have the Florida State Seminoles here is the local team that everybody supports, our football team. And if I walk into a Tallahassee bar on game day, wearing all of Gator colors, which is our rival, and I start cheering for the Gators, police will probably remove me for my own safety because I'm being stupid. Especially at these protests. So there's a reason that the management divides it and says these protesters here, these protesters here. The Trump protesters have actually a sectioned area where they protest or where they rally. And that's to keep people safe. So when you cross that barrier, aren't you then...
Sure. So you might be removed for your own safety from that X zone. But if someone actually hits you with a chair in that situation, who gets arrested?
You do, for provoking. It's similar to hate speech. If you walk up to someone and say something that is considered hateful or antagonizing against a protected class, they are legally allowed to assault you at that point, and you will still be the one who is charged because you were inciting violence.
Do you think that's a good law?
I think that you'd have to be stupid to think that you could walk over to their side, start saying something about their banners or giving them grief and not get some sort of retaliation. To me, it sounds like you're antagonizing them and trying to get a response, which he did, and then he's a real man, but he's gonna scream and cry about it.
If you can't take a joke, you should not be in political activism. For a start, if you can't take criticism, you shouldn't be in political activism. If you are being violent towards your critics or deplatforming, you shouldn't be in politics because you are showing a childish attitude that finds that you are completely unfit for any kind of thing. And if you're in charge of anything and another leader gave you what you consider to be a slight and you escalated things to a warlike situation because you're basically acting in a manner which is unbefitting. If you are the kind of person who is going to, like, there are always going to be like idiots, and if someone has said something which is genuinely discriminatory or racist or, you know, attacking a protected group effectively, then yeah, you can charge them with defamation. You can charge them with at least under certain hate speech laws. Now, I don't agree with a lot of them, but you can do that. A physical assault is so far out of line that I cannot even begin to understand how people would think that is acceptable.
So if someone had a physical reaction to something you say that it 100% does not matter. You can say anything in the world. If it then elicits a physical response from that person, they are in the wrong.
The only thing that I would police is incitement to violence, which is literally calling on someone to attack you or on people to attack for you. That is the only thing which I think is would need to be somewhat regulated.
Okay. I would, of course, be a lot more restrictive. That I'd say common sense. If I could see that you were clearly walking up to someone, antagonizing them, giving them a hard time, causing them grief, trying to incite violence from them towards you, and they turned around and punched you in the face, I'd laugh at you and say you got what you deserve. Leave them alone.
If you're trying to incite violence from someone, then you can call them stupid, but you cannot justify the actions of someone who loses self-control and then violates your human rights.
Well, did she lose her self-control in that situation, or was she making a calculated decision?
She physically assaulted him.
Which may have been a decision based on how he was acting and where he was standing. And
so
Yvette Villarca has a history of assaulting people for no reason. She has been arrested. She has done a lot of illegal stuff. So in her case, no, I'm sure it was not deserved. If it was just some random person, then we might say, oh, let's look into it. But knowing her history, no, I'm sure it was never talked
regardless of deservingness, I would say that a lack of self-control and a violation of human rights. Like, even if someone says something to you that you find utterly abhorrent, there is nothing there that justifies you assaulting them. Nothing at all. Like, they could come up to you and say that they'd, I don't know, they say, oh, I'll rape your sister or something like that. That's a horrible thing to say, and you can you could choose to walk away, or you can take it on the chin effectively, but there's still nothing in there because they're goading you into attacking them, and it's
and that makes you the weaker person and probably less intelligent in that situation. If you were a more enlightened and intelligent individual, you would be able to confront them and use your words.
Well, you can do that, or you can decide that they're not
use to the person who's inciting them, especially if in this situation the person who responds with violence is clearly the less equipped person who is not in control of their emotions, isn't able to handle the situation. So it seems
well, but they're not able to handle themselves. They're not able to handle the situation. They need to be removed, and they need to be.
She was standing on her side. She was protesting legally, where she was allowed to be protesting on that campus of whatever.
And he's criticizing her method of protest, and albeit in a sarcastic or sardonic way.
And we allow him to do that. He can do that if he wants on his side.
And at what point does it become illegal?
When he crossed over to the other side, where he needs to be protesting with her. She saw someone protesting or making fun of them.
So you ask the police you ask the police to remove him, because that's their job in that situation. You don't attack that person.
Possibly. You could make an argument to say that she should have let law enforcement resolve the situation.
She should have let law enforcement resolve
But I don't think that
otherwise you're
to stand on at that point, because
you are victim blaming you, sir. to use that kind of rhetoric, that's exactly, it's like he was asking for it. Well, it's like if in a domestic violence situation, and let's say that the wife in this situation who's going to be abused has been riling up her husband all day and making offhand comments, and then and calls him like small dicked or something, and then he turns around and smacks her one. Are you going to say that, well, she shouldn't have been inciting him to punch her?
No, of course not.
I don't see a difference between the two situations in terms of that kind of thing.
Someone that you don't know, who is clearly against your organization, walking into the middle of your group and mocking your group, and you would be surprised if that person was then assaulted by someone in that group.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I would.
Domestic violence.
I wouldn't be surprised if it happened, but I don't think it should happen.
Interestingly enough, though, walking into another group, making fun of them, and getting physically assaulted pretty much only happens with the leftist groups. If a leftist walks into a right-leaning group and starts doing this, the people are just going to make fun of them. They're not going to attack.
No, to be fair, we saw several people assaulted at Trump rallies where they were antagonizing the Trump supporters, and they were screaming at Trump on the stage, and we saw them multiple times being assaulted during the campaign by conservatives as they were being drug out of the arenas.
Okay, I didn't see those. I will take your word for it. I know you watched.
Where a guy literally steps up and just elbows one of the people in the face, and I had very little sympathy for the people because they were at a Trump rally, screaming that he's a racist, literally flipping the middle finger to everyone in the audience, telling all of them they're racists, and they got assaulted, roughed up a little bit on their way out. I would expect that. I'd expect that from both sides. If you walked into an opposing camp and screamed or picked on them or whatever. And again, I think that he would be fine if he's assaulted. If anybody messes with you, call the police. You have, you can cry about it. Unless you walked into their organization, you are the opposing viewpoint and you're antagonizing. At that point, it's very hard to defend you. But that's just my opinion. We can have a conversation on what should be law and what isn't, but I think that's a bigger topic than we're on right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll have to leave it at I respectfully disagree.
That's fair.
Okay, the last one is the last example here is the only example where the person involved did not get arrested, but they were involved in a physical conflict. So this last one, Jovi, Jovi. After 4 hours on the dance floor after a Milo party, Jovi's MAGA hat fell off and some lady jumped on it and began grinding it into the floor. He had to move her out of the way to pick it up, and when he got back up, her boyfriend bottled Jovi in the face and cut it open. He was also bottled in the back of the head. He fought back and won, but he got his nose broken in the process. The assailants are being charged with felony assault. Jovi was just minding his own business, and he suffered for it. So in this case, he wasn't arrested. His assailants were arrested, but because he was involved in a fight, they counted that as a 4th degree. And if I can, just to kind of sum it up this here, as he sums up what is the 4th degree. These are not brothers going out looking for a fight. These are brothers defending themselves after getting messed with. We don't want anyone to die, and we are against violence. Basic Man has, and then he talks about a different group that some people want to say they're related, and they're kind of related, but not totally. The media calls us violence because we dare to hit back after being attacked. The 4th degree is not about offense, it's about defense. Please be careful out there, brothers. This is supposed to be fun.
See, even if it's supposed to be fun, if you're going out and you're going into their groups, they seem to be inciting it. And I think that because of the wording in that 4th degree, they're going to be legally liable to a lot of problems. I think that this group needs to revisit their points and reword them a little bit.
I think that that's what he was trying to do, though, with this explanation, this clarification. He did write an entire article, which we read a little over half of it.
With someone who, again, was in the wrong in going over and causing problems in a legal protest, who up to that point were civil, right?
No, by any means necessary is practically never civil, and I don't think that
were they civil up to the point that he went over to their side and started causing a problem.
We don't know. The Berkeley riots were incredibly violent. So
really, again, goes back to that 4th rule that I can't get behind and I can't think is legal.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my overall opinion on the group. Mark, what are you thinking?
I think we know where I disagree with you.
Definitely.
I do think that it could be better worded. I think a simple solution would simply be linking to this sort of more nuanced article afterwards. But I do tend to lean on the side of it should not, exercising your right to self-defense should not be frowned upon, but encouraged. But at the same time, I have some reservations about basically putting an accolade to it.
Yeah, it's the reward after that seems to incentivize it almost, where you're like, oh, slow down.
Well, as he says, it's a consolation prize.
Yeah, you'd have to emphasize the fact that it's a situation. Well, they try and do it again. From my perspective, it doesn't really come across that well to the lay person. You guys
just aren't as autistic as I am when you read things.
Apparently not. But it's very easy to read stuff into that which isn't there.
Not if you just read what is there. Okay. No, I see what you're saying, and I appreciate this. It's helping me to see it in a new light. But see, even now I read it and I'm like, I don't see what you're saying. I see how you could foist that upon it. You could make some parts of it say what you're saying, but that's not what it actually says. So sure. I do get where you're coming from. But again, I'm
I
just
guess
so
I
liberal myself.
I understand what it's saying. I would like it to be clearer than it is. There you go.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's the only thing that we're talking about here is the legality of it. As far as whether anybody should join this group, whether this group is good at being here or beneficial, no, it's stupid and it's full of people who are ignorant enough to join a group like this. I have as much problem with this group as I would with any liberal group. Well, not to say that I have a problem with most liberal groups, but far the one that you were talking about, the B whichever,
By any means necessary.
that one, I'd have the same problem with this group that I would with one like that it seems to be, even if it is illegal, it seems to be promoting sort of this confrontational, angry crowd that we get now on both sides of the aisle, where we can't communicate or talk civilly about issues before people start flying off the handles because we're so combative about it. It doesn't seem productive at all. Whereas if they had a similar organization that was positive and it had all of the values that they wanted, but in a loving way, and they were trying to be supportive of people being more manly and things, I think they do better. Whereas it just seems so confrontational, so combative.
Mhm.
I don't think they'll ever get anything accomplished other than just getting like-minded people to come and assault people.
Well, and again, they're not trying to get anything accomplished, and they're also not trying to assault people. Their goal is to just get together, have fun, get drunk,
and be unashamedly masculine.
And
Mhm.
I apologize. Somebody just mentioned in chat that the by all means necessary group is not liberal.
Yeah, they okay.
Characterizing them, I do not know. I assumed it was a
It's
if they're
leftist.
protesting.
It's far left.
It
Something you want to understand. American liberal is
liberal
different from any other liberal. In other nations, when you say liberal, it means somebody who supports the liberty. In America, when you say liberal, it means far left. So Overlord is probably one of our British viewers, and it's like, they're not liberals. Well, they're American far left, so we call that liberal, even though no, they're not technically liberal by the
they're
strict
not real.
definition of
They're not real liberals.
Yeah.
They're what we. Yeah, it's what we. What we understand to be liberal, you would call classical English liberal, which is very different to or typical leftist liberal, shall we say, libtards.
I guess we have the Antifa and some of the more extreme groups here that we just kind of say liberal. That's all that group.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've tried to stop using the word liberal just because I'm talking more to people from other nations, and liberal doesn't mean the same thing over there.
Plus we want to take the word. Plus we want to take the word and the definition of liberal back, so that it actually means what it originally means, so that people just stop conflating it with something which has bastardized it. Anyway,
yes.
Before I get too far down that rabbit hole,
I'm passionate about this.
Yes, as someone who self-describes as a classical liberal / conservative, yes. So.
Yeah, see, and in America, if you said a liberal conservative,
I was going to say you can't have those two words in the same sentence.
Doesn't work together in America.
No.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, I feel like I have gotten a good what would be the word? A good picture of what a complete outsider would view the Proud Boys, which that helps me. Because again, I was seeing some of the responses to them by people, and I'm like, how do you even get that? Oh my goodness, you got to be ridiculous. But no, hearing your explanation of it, I'm thinking, okay, now I do see where they're coming from. I still
on that Proud Boys USA website. Sorry, does it have? I thought I saw something at the bottom which said levels like 5 to 10.
Yes, I think that's a joke. Here, I'll show you.
Okay.
Okay, so here we have level 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10 is very, very complicated.
Oh, I see. It's redacted.
Yes, I really think it's just a joke.
The 10th degree is clearly believing that aliens colonized the planet long ago. That there are these things called thetans that are giving you all your bad emotions. And that spacecraft shaped mysteriously like Boeing 747s are what brought people to it. I don't know.
Yes. Just in
you
case
only get that if you've paid in $10 million. Yeah.
Yes. No, just in case some people have criticisms or complaints against this group, as far as the fact that so much of it has to do with being in a fight or getting beat up or something like that, I'd quickly just counter and say go into any martial arts dojo, all of the MMA schools and gyms that are popping up everywhere, spend some time in there, and you'll forget about this group and try to make them illegal. Go be an activist against your local karate dojo. They are much rougher.
Yes, or I'm thinking any construction site. Seriously.
Oh yeah, yeah. Assaults don't even go reported there.
Yeah, and so I guess for me, when I was reading through this, I was laughing. I thought it was funny. It made me think of some guys I knew as teenagers, and I thought if they were to get together and form a club, this is what it would look like. You know.
Yeah, and I can see where people would read this and be like, "Wow, that's such a violent, angry group," and it seems like an angry, ignorant group to me, and that's offensive for me to say, but that's what I feel. Other than the small legal issues, really, you're going to have a hard time saying that this group shouldn't exist or that it's bad or evil or.
Well, a lot of people do. A lot of people do. And so, okay, if we still have time, we could get into what the Southern Poverty Law Center says about them. If are you guys okay with that?
I can talk with Mark all day.
I have another hour if you need it. So yeah.
Okay, but I know Mark has to get up early in the morning. He's okay. Here, Southern Poverty Law Center. Yes.
Brings an interesting perspective I don't hear very much here talking in our social circles.
Oh, Mark does, you mean?
Yeah, just.
Yes. Oh, it is. It's fascinating once you get into deeper conversations with people from other countries, just because you're so used to how, say, the American mindset and British mindset is so different. The Dutch mindset is so different. I had a conversation with a Dutch guy, and I can't even remember what we disagreed on, but there was kind of communication issues there that we worked out. It can be very interesting. Yeah. Okay, so this is from the Southern Poverty. Oh, whoops, sorry, I didn't share my screen. Southern Poverty Law Center, the Proud Boys. Established in the midst of the 2016 presidential election by Vice Media co-founder Gavin McInnes, the Proud Boys are self-described Western chauvinists who adamantly deny any connection to the racist alt-right, insisting they are simply a fraternal group spreading an anti-political correctness and anti-white guilt agenda. Their disavowals of bigotry are belied by their actions. Rank-and-file Proud Boys and leaders regularly spout white nationalist memes, which, by the way, Joshua, do you know what a white nationalist meme would be?
Yeah.
Okay. Pepe.
Have you heard of memes? Yeah.
Yes. But basically, if the SPLC says it's a white nationalist meme, that's probably nothing but Pepe. If it's a frog, it's white nationalist.
Yeah.
Okay. And maintain affiliations with known extremists, of which Gavin McInnes would be one, I'm sure. They're known for
when you're founded by someone they regard as an extremist, it's hard to not associate with extremists.
Yeah, and Gavin, by the way, Joshua, Gavin is he's Scottish. He was raised in Canada. His parents are very Scottish. You hear his dad talk. He's got the strong accent, and Gavin has no problem starting fights. Now I shouldn't say that. He wouldn't have a problem starting a fight with somebody who's willing to fight him. It'd be different, going out and starting a fight at a protest or something like that. But a bar fight,
just a rowdy guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
Who boxes a lot, and you wouldn't want to get in a fight with.
I think Joshua could take Gavin. Just saying. I could be wrong.
Oh, quite possibly. It's something to do with the fact that Gavin is in his 50s now. So there you go.
Oh, he's an old man.
Okay, yeah, that's. Yeah, we have. I think I have the picture. Yeah, this is him, Joshua, in the suit and tie.
Yes.
They're all in the shirt and the tie, and he has plenty of tattoos. He's tough for his size and age.
He's famous mainly for being a Fox News presenter and former. Worked for Rebel Media, former, and then Vice co-founder and. Obviously the Proud Boys thing, which he does now, but
Vice, the news group.
Yes, I think
Vice.
Christ.
Yeah, Vice Media.
Yeah, Vice Media. And then he But he has some very controversial statements. He once told a woman that she would be happier at home.
He says a lot of things that can come across as sexist. He does not mind. He delivers everything in kind of a deadpan way. So he will say some pretty horrific things, just say it totally seriously, and then let you know that's a joke. So once you've listened to him enough, I've listened to several of his videos just because he's been interviewed by, or has interviewed, a lot of people that I like to watch, and I've listened to him enough now that I can usually tell when he's joking. But if the first couple videos I saw with him, I was shocked and appalled. I'm like, who is this guy? Oh, he's horrific. And then after watching him for a while, I'm like, oh, okay, no, never mind. He's actually pretty funny. I don't agree with him on everything, but he is pretty funny.
Yeah, he used to run a comedy series called How's It Going, Eh?
I haven't seen that. See, I really haven't seen many of his videos alone. I've seen a couple on topics I liked, but it's not like, he's not someone I'll just go through and watch all his videos.
Sure.
Although I might enjoy them. I don't know. Anyway, so going back to this, Proud Boys, where is it? They are known for anti-Muslim and misogynistic rhetoric. Proud Boys have appeared alongside other hate groups at extremist gatherings like the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. Indeed,
that's a lie.
Well, they actually contradict themselves in a minute. Indeed, former Proud Boy member Jason Kessler helped to organize the event, which brought together Klansmen, anti-Semites, Southern racists, and militias. Kessler was only expelled from the group after the violence and near universal condemnation of the Charlottesville rallygoers. So in other words, a Proud Boy member organized this group and was then thrown out of the Proud Boys for doing it. Therefore, the Proud Boys are associated with this movement.
But again, though, so what? Even if they were, so what?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that it's kind of funny that the SPLC just
published blatant misinformation.
I'm sorry, I noticed the chat is saying, can you post the link? I'm just going to put the link in the chat. Actually, I don't know if I can put links in chats.
You can, because you're the owner of the stream.
That's right, that's my stream. Okay.
You can't in my stream. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, because you haven't given me a wrench, right?
No, even people with wrenches can't post links, as far as I'm aware.
That makes sense. Anyway, okay. And plus, anybody who just search Southern Poverty Law Center Proud Boys, it's going to come up with this. Anyway, where is it? Where are we? Proud Boys. Right. Okay. Other hardcore members of the so-called alt-right have argued that the Western chauvinist label is just a PR cuck term. Okay, again, that McInnes grafted to gain mainstream acceptance. So basically, the alt-right attacks them. Therefore, they're alt-right.
I don't think Gavin is. Shall we say? I think he can take a nuanced view. I think he's unwilling to take a nuanced approach to language when it comes to describing himself. So when he says Western chauvinist, I think I would trust that to be more accurate than most things that get thrown out by people to describe themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Just in terms of, yeah.
Well, and again, SPLC, it's like they're writing this to say, oh, they're evil and they're racist, but they're contradicting themselves in the article. They're saying, oh, look, the alt-right even says that they're not alt-right. Therefore, they must be alt-right. What?
Well, is anybody claiming to be alt-right these days? It seems to be just
yes.
No. There are. I'll send you the link later. I actually debated two people who are alt-right who push for an ethno-nationalist, ethno-nation, or what's the word?
Was that
they want to get rid of everybody who's not white here in America. They want laws to
like neo-Nazis or something.
Effectively,
sort of. I mean,
I just mean in the realm of rational, intelligent people that you run into, or groups like even Milo and
Milo's not
Shapiro.
alt-right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Even them, they're like, we're not alt-right. What are you, crazy? It seems to be something that people are labeled a lot of the time. That just as soon as you disagree with them, you're like, you're alt-right. Well, you're a Nazi, and then we just scream.
Yes. But no, the alt-right does exist. They're a group with a considerable number of members. I mean, they're still a very small group, and they have no real power. So it's not. I was talking to somebody about it, and they were freaking out about it. I said, "Don't be scared of the alt-right. They have no power." Like, you watch, they're going to take power. I don't.
How? Like how?
Yeah.
What rational people are electing them? Well, Donald Trump is effectively alt-right. Well, I don't think you'll find he is.
No, there was a white nationalist that showed up at one of his groups, and he had the guy thrown out because he had some white nationalist poster or something.
Well, even there, again, back to this, where it's saying that they're organizing and they're part of these groups and they align with these groups. So what? At the end of the day, what's your problem with that? If Trump were alt-right, he's not going to get anything done. Nothing goes through Congress. He's not going to be able to pass any controversial, thank you, laws or anything. So
yeah, you look, I mean, yeah, you're just looking at it and you're going, they're not all right, but they the kinds of people who will be attracted to them won't care about the label anyway. But I do think that it becomes an issue when you let's say there's a big Proud Boys rally, like they want to have, there's a big group of them, they want to get together and basically go out on the town, and the police are informed that a big alt-right gathering is there, and that sort of thing. I mean, we've seen this sort of thing happen with a number of different protests where either counter-protesters, believing them to be alt-right, attack them, or the police are on the lookout for anything that they can use to arrest them because they believe they're neo-Nazis when they're not.
Yes. And side note, Dominic in the chat gave me the right word, ethno-state. That's the word I was looking for, trying to establish an ethno-state. But yes, the reason this came up,
pay people to leave.
Yeah, it's interesting. The reason this whole thing came up with the Proud Boys is I am a member of a group of political activists, if you will. And when recently there was a situation where I think it was a black lady was killed. I don't know if she was killed by police or what, but she died. There was a funeral for her, and then somebody from Antifa said that the Proud Boys were going to show up and protest it. So Antifa came out to attack the Proud Boys or whatever, and there was a guy there that somebody posted a picture and said, this guy's a member of the Proud Boys. So they actually took him, attacked him, beat him up or whatever. Turns out, no, the Proud Boys were not coming out there. They had no intention of being in that area. Gavin McInnes is like, are you crazy? We go out to bars to get drunk, and this was a Monday night. We're not going to go out on a Monday night. So it was kind of funny. Well, I mean, his reaction was funny. The fact that somebody who was not a Proud Boy was attacked and all of that.
Assaulted, yeah.
Yeah. It was not pleasant.
So anyway, that because of this aggressive escalation that everybody's taking on each side, which is one of the, just shows how ignorant the Proud Boys are. If they want to take things down, if they want less violence in America, if they want things to be better and more civil to where we can work through our differences, they need to take a much more passive approach, whereas each side just seems to be escalating more and more. It'll be interesting to see where it ends.
I don't think the Proud Boys really care about shall we say, promoting peace and a lack of hostility as much as, if you attack us, we're going to beat the crap out of you.
Yeah, that seems.
But if you just leave us alone, that's all they want, is to be left alone and to not be judged for who they are, I think.
I don't think that they do, because if you wanted to be left alone, you would just hang out with your friends and not start a group and put it all online where you know people are going to get riled up, where you know you're going to get responses.
But they actually say the Fourth Degree started after one of their members was attacked. So that didn't even exist. It was just guys getting together and having fun. That was it. Until they started being attacked, then that's when they instituted the Fourth Degree, if you will. And they even say it's a consolation prize. If you are attacked for being a Proud Boy, or if you go out to one of these Antifa protests and just stand in the way, so that because I don't know if you've seen the videos of some of these Antifa protests, but they've almost killed people. So, and if the Proud Boys did go out to one in particular where Lauren Southern was going to be speaking, and they knew there was an Antifa threat. They knew the police were not going to be there to do anything, because that's happened too several times, where the police they stand back or literally leave the area intentionally. And they've caught police on camera where they're like, why aren't you over there where violence is going on? And the police are like, we've been ordered to stand down where there's nothing we can do. So the Proud Boys showed up to this place and basically just stood there and said, you know, we are her unofficial bodyguards. because she just wants to speak, and you guys are here to cause violence, and we're standing here and just back off. And we're not advancing on Antifa, at least in this situation. They were standing there essentially as a guard, if you will, saying, we will not back up, we will not stand down. We're going to stand here. You guys can say whatever you want and then go away. And recently there was, there have been some that turned violent. There was one not long ago that people have been posting where, again, Proud Boys are just standing there and Antifa started throwing, not smoke bombs, or something like that. I don't think it was as bad as a Molotov cocktail, but something like that, just throwing it into the groups. So then, yeah, the Proud Boys moved forward, just started walking forward, and Antifa immediately backed up because most of them, they're not fighters. They're not. Anyway.
But is that the right response when there's, let's say, a corrupt official, when they say, police stand down, do not step in and intervene? Is the right thing for civilians to then come out and try to regulate?
Yeah.
Would you feel?
Yes.
Okay,
If there is violence in the streets, I mean, the riots way back in California, I don't know, a couple decades ago, where the rioters were literally going around and burning buildings and killing people, and there was a group of Koreans that kind of got together, and they were up on the roof of their store because the police just abandoned the area. So people are literally dying, and these Koreans just got up on the roof of their store with machine guns. And when the rioters came, they just shot. I mean, I think they shot at the ground. I don't think they really killed many rioters, but the rioters backed off. They're like, whoa, okay, we're not doing this.
Yeah, I believe that was the burning of Los Angeles after the what's his name trial. But
yeah,
that was actually largely the violence and the shooting in that community had been building for years, and those were actually opposing gangs that were exchanging a lot of the gunfire in that particular situation. It wasn't just stopping looting and stopping the city still burned. It just so happened that some people who had guns and were affiliated with violent groups already were able to defend themselves from rival gangs.
Mm-hmm. When you have other things where, I don't remember what it was, but after one of the hurricanes here in Florida, where people had to evacuate, a lot of people had evacuated, and you had groups of looters going around, and there was a trailer park where they knew there were gangs of looters going around, and who were sometimes armed, sometimes violent. So two guys got their shotguns and their lawn chairs and just went out and just sat at the entrance to the trailer park with their shotguns and just watched as the looters ran back and forth. Like, you do whatever you want out there, but you come in here and you're going to die. And nobody even tried to come in. So yeah, there are times where civilians have the right to just stand their ground and say, you're not coming in here.
Okay.
American history reference.
Yeah. Anyway, if we wanted to go back to this though, so let me share this again. Okay, so you can see the SPLC, they're just saying, like Gavin McInnes himself has ties to the racist right.
What happened? This freedom of association thing, and also the fact that by ties to the racist right, they mean that he may have some right-wing racist people who follow him.
No. They're going to explain. They're going to explain what they mean.
Oh, sure.
They say he has contributed to hate sites like VDare.com and the American Renaissance, both of which publish the work of white supremacists and so-called race realists. So in other words, we know he's racist because he has articles published by a site that also publishes articles by the alt-right. Therefore, he must be racist. Yeah. I mean, the logic involved is just, non-existent. Okay.
It's guilt by association.
Yeah, well, I mean...
And he's not even really associated in that regard.
That's like saying...
The closest you could say is that the website is associated with the racism, but he isn't.
But this is like saying Obama must be racist because Obama has videos on YouTube, and guess who else has videos on YouTube? Richard Spencer. Therefore, Obama must be racist because they both have videos on the same platform.
Yeah.
Like, what? I mean, it's not even as close as, Sargon must be racist because he was actually in a video with Richard Spencer. Granted, he was debating him. He was saying how wrong he was, and he was laughing at him, but he was in the same video. I mean, it's not even that close. It's
Yeah.
McGinnis has articles that have been published on this site, which also has published articles by white supremacists and race realists. It's like, so again, it's this, the SPLC is saying, or their proof, quote unquote, is kind of ridiculous.
They're making the assertion off of baseless.
Yes. I like this, though. McInnes plays a duplicitous rhetorical game, rejecting white nationalism, and in particular the term alt-right, while espousing some of its central tenets.
It's like Hitler was a vegetarian who was very ecologically minded. Therefore, all vegetarians are espousing Hitler slogans.
Mm-hmm.
I know you may just be giving a for instance. Was Hitler a vegetarian?
He was, yes.
In real life? Oh, okay. That is an interesting bit of trivia.
I know, it's one of those bizarre things that you just pick up when everyone wants to call you a Nazi.
Okay.
There you go.
I still think that's so weird. I mean, it is hard to imagine Hitler being vegetarian, but okay.
The main people who've called me a Nazi, to be fair, have been people on my own side. So, as a joke, bless.
Okay, the chat is saying no, he wasn't.
Oh, no, he wasn't. Oh, for goodness sake.
Oh, well. Okay, so...
I'm going to use that whenever someone calls me a Nazi now. Be like, wait, but did you know this random tidbit? Now we've made a connection. We can joke and laugh about this. I'm not a Nazi.
Well, if enough people say it, everybody will believe it, unfortunately.
But anyway. Even if you are, like this, whatever...
Sorry, 1 second. Towards the end of his life, Adolf Hitler followed a vegetarian diet. There you go.
Yeah, and considering the fact that he died in the war, that while he was pushing Nazi propaganda, he was a vegetarian.
Or he asserted that he was. He wasn't very good at following it, apparently.
Okay.
But anyway.
Yeah. No, it's great.
So then, they're making a lot of accusations here, and they're making a lot of connections that are kind of thin. But again, even if they weren't, what is the point? Is any of that illegal? Is it illegal for him to be published on a hateful site? And then, okay, so it's a hateful organization. So what?
Words are violence, man. That's what they're saying.
The question is,
you're standing in the wrong area.
The question with this group isn't whether it should be illegal; it's whether it is a hate group, so to speak,
deserving of its reputation.
Yes, and the SPLC is saying, "Oh, they're a hate group." Like, no, and it sounds like Joshua, you would say, "No, they're just idiots."
I would say they're a hate group because of their Rule 4. Because of Degree 4, I believe that they are an extremely hateful and horrible organization. If that was reworded and clarified, then I would say that
it has been reworded and clarified.
No, they need to change it in the main page. I see.
That's not the main page. That's the USA branch.
The USA branch needs to rebrand and clarify. But I see what you're saying. As far as the rest of it, what you do in your private sex life, that's none of my business. I don't care. If you like fighting people, then you're like anyone at any number of places who do that, you know. Saying that it's a hateful organization, though, even if every member in it's hateful, that doesn't make the organization hateful.
No.
It would make one suspicious about the goals of the organization if everyone in it was hateful. But as far as it being racist, they have a lot of members who are not white.
Whoa, is that a prerequisite now?
What?
Racism?
I'm going to stay out of American race politics because I don't know enough about it. So
we can just let that comment slide by.
Okay. So then the SPLC goes on to give a lot of quotes by Gavin McInnes to say, oh, look, here are his own words explaining why it's so bad, whatever, which I know Mark has to leave at some point. I don't know if we want to go over these. I think a lot of them are funny, but then again, considering how you reacted to
let's go through a couple. I can stay for say 10 more minutes, and we'll crack on.
I was trying to. I'm glancing over it. I read through a bunch of them, and actually, the first ones aren't really funny. They're more kind of disturbing because he's talking about Muslims.
See,
Oh,
and
well.
someone has mentioned judging them by their fruit. I immediately think of any religion or any nonprofit organization, and there's a member of it that does something bad. We can't then say that that nonprofit is evil or sue them or do anything like that. So it's difficult to judge an organization by the fruit unless it's done in the name of the organization, which is where you really nail them to the wall by terminology and by what they put out, their actual curriculum from the organization, because that's the only thing that'll uphold in court. So yes, you can look at it and say it's a horrible, hateful because of this, what their people do, but
I think you
that's
can
kind
just
of
find that the
irrelevant.
organization can say they're not a real X, and that's all we need.
Yeah.
I think you should judge a group, yes, by its tenets, by its teachings, but at the same time, if it is producing a lot of negative fruit, then you do have to ask why. Is it that it is being misinterpreted, or
Yeah, and
know,
why
maybe
is it
not.
being misinterpreted, and what changes might need to be made?
But see, if we look at, and this is Donald Trump's argument as to why we need to put people into mosques and start infiltrating or reviewing a particular religion, because we have so much danger coming from it. Therefore, it's justified for us to survey it, to figure out what's being taught, and to review it. No, that's not just grounds, unless it's being done in the name of that particular organization, or unless that organization is somehow promoting violence. It's very difficult to say, even if there is violence coming from it, that we step that far.
It's also very difficult to say what is promoting violence, particularly in terms of a religious group, for instance, because there are passages, say in the Quran, which directly advocate for violence, and yet the majority of moderate Muslim teaching, I would say, doesn't advocate that particular part of the Quran, but nevertheless that is still in there, and one interpretation of the Quran will take that tenet as much more important than, say, the moderates would take it. And so you will end up with things where people will drive a truck across the bridge, get out, yell Allahu Akbar, and claim that their actions are in the name of the faith, at which point the members of the faith denounce the person as not of the faith, and then the next one rolls around, and so it's hard to hold.
Joshua doesn't. I don't think Joshua keeps up with British politics, so driving a truck across a bridge may not mean anything to him.
I've read about that in the news.
Okay.
I try to keep up with the news. It's just there's so many groups and so many that, like, even now, like you, when you name what you are politically, you use like 5 words.
I do not. I use 2 words. They just have a lot of syllables.
Yeah, it's silly. I have trouble keeping up with all of the different groups and things, but no, I'm familiar with what you're referring to. But as like you said, as soon as that religion says we disavow that was not of us, that was terrible, and we sympathize with the loss of life, they're clear. We aren't.
And how
investigating them, you know? Sure,
but how? So how many times does a group have to, like, because let's say take Muslims overrepresent, for instance, in terror attacks worldwide massively, and so you go, how many times does the main group have to say this one is not of us, and at the same time not examine what is generating these people, because you're not allowed to?
Right. See, that's a really good question, but I would quickly counter that the Christian church produces the overwhelming majority of pedophiles.
It doesn't. There are more teachers who are pedophiles on average than the Catholic Church, for instance. And the Catholic Church has also, for instance, gone through a massive period of trying to purge those kinds of people from it. So they're actively.
We did not have the government come in to the.
I'm not saying that
investigating and start spying on what they're teaching.
No, but
so religion, it's protected. So
I'm not saying it's not a difficult, a wicked problem, as it were. I'm saying if you're dealing with, so Christianity, after a while, was able to self-examine and purge, but what you're getting from, say, the Muslim people is, no, these people have nothing to do with us. None of our people are hate preachers and that sort of thing. radicalization of Muslims in prisons in the UK, for instance, which is being done primarily by both the Muslim groups inside and the imams which go into prisons to talk to prisoners, is nothing to do with us if they commit another crime. And we're nothing's wrong with us. Nothing is wrong with us. It's all about, it's their problem. It's not us. It's the equivalent of the Catholic Church going, those pedophiles, it's nothing to do with us. They're just one bad seed. It's just one bad seed. And 1,000 pedophiles later, it's just a bad seed. It's just a bad seed. It's nothing to do with our hiring practice and the fact that we are too trusting and didn't put appropriate background checks or appropriate safeguarding measures on our churches.
Okay, two things here. Joshua, I think that the majority of pedophiles in Great Britain are not Christian at this point. Just looking at all the child grooming gangs over there.
Oh, I apologize. I know very little of England or Britain and such.
But another thing, though, Mark, when you say how many does it have to be before we examine the group in total, the same point would be made by feminists who say, how many times do we have to see a man rape a woman before we say the problem is with masculinity? It's men who are doing this. Women aren't raping each other. Men are raping each other and women. So therefore, it's a problem with masculinity, and all men need to pay the price.
Okay, so if we took the rape aspect to that, you have to examine the whole thing as a whole. So it's not examining Christianity with the assumption that Christians are at fault. It's examining Christianity and the organization of Christians, which is producing an overrepresentation of these people in this particular category. So in the position of pedophilia, it was because the church was not performing adequate background checks. They were not putting in place appropriate safeguarding. They were not keeping tabs. They also had a culture of in-house dealing with things where if they had someone who was a pedophile, they would basically be counseled by the church to try and to believe that they could just basically talk them out of it, which is was not very effective, and that sort of thing. And those practices are the things which then became scrutinized, and the things which were being taught to and the lack of emphasis on safeguarding as well, and the way that they were teaching new church leaders was also what was being scrutinized, as much as the doctrine of the church itself, which was considered to not contain an advocation for pedophilia. If you're going to take that, if you're going to take the rape aspect for the idea of men, it's like, well, what's creating rapists is what's the extent of the problem, and what so take something like, you could look at the definition of rape. Rape can only be perpetrated by a man on a woman according to the legal definition, and that
ignoring that, you still have men raping women far more often, and I do believe that a woman can rape a man, but so that's why I say the vast majority. I didn't say all. No, but even if you say any sort of forced sexual contact is, well, forced intercourse.
The difference, the difference, I think, in this this sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? This allegory? No, this association. I think it's a poor metaphor, because men are not an organization. Right. There is not a standardized set of practices that are taught to men as a whole worldwide. That's just not the way it works. It's too diffuse a group in order to make that kind of connection.
Well, at what point do you punish an organization or investigate it based off of the actions of people who the I don't says we have nothing to do with them, we don't want them doing this?
Well, this is one of those things. So I believe the presidency, not the presidency, there was an MP in the UK, a member of parliament, who stood up and said, look, these are practices that are in the Quran. These are the verses that are there and that are being used by terrorists to justify their actions. Would the Combined Muslim Council of Britain, and they do exist, issue a fatwa against these practices to make it absolutely clear to anyone, moderate or not, that these will not be tolerated, right? At which point there was a massive backlash from the Muslim community saying, it's not us, it's not our fault that these people are interpreting these verses wrong, we're not going to do anything about it, what you're saying is Islamophobic. Now that's different to them saying, what they should have said, which is, if these are being interpreted incorrectly, you need to make 100% sure that they are in terms of your fatwaing against them, and then you're denouncing the dissidents within your organization who are doing that, which makes them less likely to be accepted by the moderates, shall we say, because currently the more extreme view Muslims are able to justify some of what they're saying by the fact that they are scripturally upheld, whereas if the leaders of the Muslim community are denouncing these kind of verses, then it's a different matter. You know, the culture or the attitude towards it has changed, which you're not seeing at the moment.
I think that it's actually fair, and this may sound like a violation of church state, for the church to be required to clarify issues that could potentially be dangerous. Like you're saying, if they were to go to, let's say, any church, any denomination, the Baptists, and said, you guys need to clarify this point because we have a huge problem with people misinterpreting it, and your followers are then committing crimes. I think that would be a fair thing for a government to ask of an organization. Say, put this note on your website if you don't mind clarifying. I don't think that'd be a gross overstep of a government looking out for its people.
I'd have to think about that because
is an overstep. Oh, I'm sorry. You think that's an overstep for them to ask the Muslim community to clarify something like that could be misinterpreted?
It's very difficult, particularly in original. I mean, you think about how many different denominations there are of church, and where they disagree on the nuance of certain scripture, and so it's like, to what extent does the state legislate
only at
what an interpretation can be?
Only at the time, like we're talking about, extreme situations where we're seeing multiple terrorist attacks from a specific religion, or
again the difficult
church, something like that, where they need to step in and say, hey guys, we need you guys to really clarify this is not allowed, you don't promote it.
Yeah, again, the difficulty is what do you class as extreme, and also this is why, again, with separation of church and state, you say this is violating the law, this scripture appears to violate that law. You know, so it's like, it's one thing to say you should give as you are able, you know, to the church, to charity, to the poor, to whatever, to look after your fellow man. That's an obligation that you can place on yourself as a Christian, a Muslim, a Buddhist, or whatever. It's another thing to say, you know, you should behead the unbelievers, or, you know, whatever, that sort of thing. So
right,
it's I think that there is potentially a if you're seeing that particular verse carried out and practiced, and it's breaking the law, and you're constantly having to deal with the breaking of that law, you say, we're going to need you to basically outline your stance on this because it is coming from your community. Whereas at the moment, you can't criticize, say, the Muslim community, because they will say it's not our community, it's an extremist group that has taken root in an area which our community is also in. It's not our fault if they interpret it in that way. And it's a very it deflects from the issue and the fact that you should be able to say this isn't right.
Right. And I guess that's where I'd have to side a little bit on the government there and against a religion, is they should at least say, yes, the government's right in this instance, this is wrong. Not, oh, well, we're not associated. They should agree that it's wrong. And so if...
Well, it's hard when you, like, I don't think it should be illegal, for instance, for the church to say homosexuality as a practice is wrong. In the eyes of God, it is wrong. At the same time, I do not think that a verse which says you should throw them from the highest tower should be tolerated as an acceptable practice if that is taking place. So it's like, you can believe that it's
not the Bible, by the way.
No, that's out of the Quran. So you're saying it's incorrect. You know, the secular law will not tolerate this because we don't agree with it, and so you need to make it very clear to your population that despite the fact that you disagree with homosexuality, and you have a right to do that privately and in your own life, and to talk to people about your view on it, you do not have a right to you do not have the right to basically fulfill that scripture literally. and that sort of thing. I think that the state could step in and say that, but I don't think the state should be saying. So, for instance, you get things like Christians in the UK being fired from their jobs as Christians. You know, so we had like the chief police chaplain who was fired for expressing on his personal blog that he disagreed with the concept of gay marriage for a variety of reasons, and I don't think he should have been fired for that, because I believe you can say what you want, and at the same time, but it's action that does it. And if you say, so it's hard to say again, because I appear to be contradicting myself here, because I'm saying you can say what you want, but at the same time, there's some things that you shouldn't be saying because it's generating a result that is, again, this is where my incitement to violence thing comes. So if you're saying if you must throw them from the top of a building, to me, that's incitement to violence. You can say they shouldn't be around, but I don't think you should say we should go out there this afternoon, and if we see any of them, we should throw them off a building. Like, I just don't see that. I think that's the distinction.
Yeah, an actual call to action, and from any organization. Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah. Anyway, I've rambled here for like 10 minutes now.
No, it's fine. Okay, well, we should probably wrap up, because I know, Mark, you have to leave early in the morning.
Off to another place in the morning. I won't say where, for my own safety now. After that little Islamophobic rant there.
Don't want Antifa to show up, and well, anyway, yeah. You probably do have Proud Boys over in England, don't you? I think they do actually.
There is a group, okay. I believe. Yeah.
Anyway, not important. But so this has been interesting. I appreciate you, Joshua, giving me your opinion as a person who knows nothing about it. I could get Mark's opinion, but I know he already knows enough about the Proud Boys that I couldn't.
I don't know. I think my opinion's been expressed fairly succinctly. So,
and Mark does a good job of acting surprised and shocked.
Well, I don't think he had ever read through the degrees of membership, so I think that was
no. I'm aware. I was aware of their existence, but I didn't.
Well, you know about the controversies they've been involved in.
Yeah, sure.
To some degree. So yeah, it was nice to get the opinion of someone who knows nothing about that, knows nothing about the controversies and all. It helps me understand a little better where some people are coming from that don't like them. Hasn't changed my view on them, although I see where you're coming from, that some of this should be reworded. But honestly, looking at the site, it looks like it's a very old site that nobody has updated in, oh yeah, it hasn't been updated in a long time. Anyway,
thank you so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun. It was a good discussion. It was really interesting getting to catch up with you, Mark, as far as someone who is a very, very different view on things than I'm used to.
Oh, it was good. And it was good chatting to you. You know, Liz warned me before I came on that you may express your views quite strongly, and I feel like I've been pressing more of mine onto you than you have on me. You know. Nice.
All right. Well, thank you both, and thank you to chat. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Sorry we didn't really. I think we did check on chat to see if they had questions. I didn't see a lot of them. I didn't ask for questions from the chat. Maybe another time we can do that if people want to see us go over this topic again, or another one. And I may be able to convince Joshua to come back on stream sometime on another topic. But anyway, I hope everyone has a good evening, and we'll see y'all later.
Take care. Good night.